Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's a brand new week, and it's another week with the MovieTime boys. You got myself, LOWKEY GEEK Renee here, and Blake, the Wolf. What's going on, dude?
The wolf. What up, Renee? I am excited to be talking to
Ow!
you. Yes, sir. I have a new hairdo. I'm going full
Yeah,
villain
man.
because of what today we're doing. I don't know if I can say this, or it's exciting. I'm excited for this draft where
Yeah,
about A24, man. And this
yeah.
is this episode. You already know how excited I am about A24. I'm glad to talk to you about this one.
I'm totally excited. As you know, A24, one of our favorite movie distributors, producers, however you wanted to refer them to them as, is celebrating their 10-year anniversary. So we thought it would be great to do a special episode dedicating it to A24 and our love of A24. We're going to go back in time and revisit one of their very first movies that they distributed. And then we have this fun thing planned out where we're going to go through kind of like a draft where each of us will pick 10 movies from the A24 library and basically use that as our top 10 films of A24, which is tough because there's just so many good movies that they've come out with.
Yeah.
I was running through the list last night, and just even picking my top 5 or top 10, I just had a hard time doing that because, especially like any given time of the year or the month or whatever, these things will change because certain movies will hit you harder than others. Or the more time you think about them, the more you're like, wait a minute, no, this movie has big impact and all that. But we'll get into all that in a minute. But thank you for watching and listening and joining us for this ride. Again, if you're brand new to the channel and you're seeing these two knuckleheads talking here, this is the Movie Time podcast where you got two bros just basically chatting about movies and bullshitting and stuff like that. So if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, hit the notification bell so you can get notified every time a new episode is uploaded on the channel. That doesn't cost you a single penny. It's free. It's free to spread the love. And if you prefer an audio version of this episode, you can find it on the LOWKEY GEEK podcast through your podcast platform of choice. Go there, check out this episode and many others to download and leave a great rating. So, without further ado, let's talk about A24. So, I'll admit, I was a little late to the A24 game. I think I really started to notice more about A24 probably within the last 4 years or so. Now, I've always known they've been around, but I've never personally have checked out any of their films that they've actually put out. As I slowly immersed myself in more and more film and movies, and opening my mind to other studios and distribution houses and all that, I started saying, you know what, let me check out this movie that A24 put out several years ago or whatever, and blew my mind. I'm just like, whoa, I haven't had that same feeling since probably I saw Clerks or Pulp Fiction back in the day, because I was so used to like the mainstream movies, the blockbuster movies and all that. Then when watching those two movies, it made me realize, whoa, wait a minute. This is an independent feel. This is something I've never seen before. A24 allows their creators to really explore the boundaries of storytelling and creativity with unique storylines, great acting, cinematography, directing, and all that kind of stuff like that. And they pull people from all different aspects of the industry by giving them kind of like that free reign to create whatever they want to create. And I think that's what makes them one of the really top tier movie companies, especially when it comes to like a more independent cinema, right? Um, so they started back in 2012 and they started releasing films in theaters in 2013. One of the first ones that they did that we'll be talking about in a minute is A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan III, which the title alone already tells you that this is going to be a different kind of movie, right? So, what's it now? 10 years later, they average like 10 to 20 movies a year. And I think mainly because of streaming, they have a lot more outlets now to kind of, distribute, produce, release, and all that stuff like that. And no longer is it seen as a distribution house where it could launch careers, but they're pulling in veterans as well to start, either directing, writing, and directing, or starring in a lot of these movies. So, Blake, what is your relationship with A24? How did you first come across them? I feel like you've been immersed in the A24 library much longer than I have. So,
Without doing a full personal history, I've been an indie movie fan forever. I like at least since I became like a teenager, high school, college age. Growing up, I would like watch on our local Oklahoma public channel. They'd have old black and white movies. I'd watch those with my mom every week. I've always kind of been into the arts and more creative stuff, and I'm also enjoy blockbusters.
mhm.
Um, I was into like I remember high school learning about Jim Jarmusch and watching him at a film movie party. I would watch The Graduate. I had a bunch of like artsy geek friends who were like, "We're doing a graduate watch party." I got super into the movies of Woody Allen. Like it was a long time ago. That was huge for me in high school. Then I'm doing film classes in college with a couple film classes, which are more going to be like the deep cuts, old Chinese cinema, old Italian cinema, French New Wave stuff, and got it. And then from there, I still have like I like good movies and not just the weird stuff. So like Scorsese or Oliver Stone, dudes like that.
Yeah.
So I think that like I was already built and ready for an A24 movie company, and we've seen in recent years like the Fox Searchlights not doing as well. Miramax, who used to be like we're gonna put money in awards type movies, like obviously Weinstein and everything else. That's just it's and then a lot of these companies are getting bought out by bigger companies, and then they're like, we don't make enough money off that. We're gonna just shutter that studio. And so thank goodness the A24 comes along 10 years
Yeah.
ago. I remember I saw Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charles Swan the third. Is that yeah?
Yeah. Hmm.
It's one of those idiosyncratic, like it's an indie movie or a weird movie. It's not a blockbuster if you have a title with that many words.
No.
I remember because as soon as I saw the title and Charlie Sheen, I think this is right after the Charlie Sheen heyday of winning.
It's yeah. I looked
Right
this up.
before?
It was 2 years after the whole
Okay.
Whitting, Tiger Blood,
Yeah.
Adonis, all that
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Right. Because I was new to New York too, right? And that I just moved to New York at the exact time when A24 is coming out, 1 year before. And so I remember being at like a New York indie cinema, which for my bona fides, like I used to vacation here growing up, and I would literally like write out all the indie movies that are never going to come to Oklahoma, where I was from, and I would go watch those. I would be in New York for 7 days and like go watch as many as I could. And then now I'm living in New York, and one of the main reasons I moved here is all the indie theaters. God bless them. And I remember going to, I think this was either Angelica or IFC Center. RIP Landmark Sunshine,
Oh
couldn't that one
yeah.
too, a classic. Um,
So good.
and I'm there like that opening weekend, and I don't know that I would have recognized A24. There's a lot of movies you see that little logo come up beforehand, and you're like, oh, that's a cool looking logo, maybe, or oh, I recognize that one from something. Some of them are solid brands.
Yeah.
Now, A24 is that brand. When you see it come up before the movie, you go, this is going to be good. At least it's going to be quality. At least it's going to be creative. Like,
Yeah.
there's going to be some artistic merit to what I'm about to see. Then I wouldn't recognize it, obviously. It's the first movie that they have. But within a couple few years, I have a few friends who are like hardcore film buff dudes like
Mhm.
me. Every new movie, we're talking about it, similar to the way you and I do. And at some point, we're like, hey, this A24 company, like, you see that logo, you know it's good. Like, what's going on there? What are they about? Who
Yeah.
who are these folks? Where'd they come from? Because it's rare to have an entertainment company deliver so many successful results, keep the lights on. Because yeah, there's a lot of artistic dreamers out there that put
Mhm.
out a couple movies, they lose money, and they're gone, and do it so consistently without selling out and without shuttering their doors.
Yeah.
A24 has been doing that for 10 solid straight years. And I remember being there in the theater for Charles Swan, and I know we're gonna get into that in a little bit, so I'll save some of like the review from it. But
Yeah.
it's been a good 10 years for that film company, and their brand is strong as hell. I like we've mentioned them before in these conversations you and I have so many times, just
Yeah.
because the consistency, and in my mind it is the Mount Everest of what an entertainment company can and should be.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I'm glad you brought up the whole logo thing too, because it is it is one of those now most recognizable brands in the movie industry, and like you said, it causes people to get excited. Like the minute you see a trailer, and now what they do with their trailers is they somehow try to incorporate the logo within like the aesthetics of the trailer. The minute that logo pops up, everyone's just like, "Oh, wait a minute." They take
Yeah,
pause and be like, "All right, I'm going to now be paying attention to this," right? And it's phenomenal how a small, what started off as a very small company has become this big mega, company that allows for this creativity to go out there, and they produce so many new things every year. We talked about prior to going live or recording this, that they do TV too,
yeah,
and we're just talking about movies in this episode, but you could, like, someone could do a whole separate episode just talking about their TV deals and their TV stuff that they produce for TV. It's so many that they do, and it still keeps it within the same A24 look and feel and creativity too. I mean, you were talking about like Euphoria, a show like that a
yeah,
lot of people watch, right? And but it's one of those like groundbreaking kind of series that is, it touches on such like heavy dark realistic subject matter and all that, but only a company like A24 can put out something like that. So yeah, so I've been very happy that I've allowed myself to start exploring more of the A24 library this week. Just kind of like preparing for this episode, I think I watched 5 A24 movies this
oh
week.
shit.
Movies that I haven't seen ever. So a lot of first times and all that stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, that was so good. Wow, that was crazy. Like, oh my God, this is like nuts, but I didn't come away with any of those movies being like, oh, that was shit, or that was like a waste of time. And that's the thing. Major studios have put out movies even more than A24, and you could say half of those things are garbage, right? Like
Yep.
A24, it's rare to find a movie that, you know, is just pure trash. Now, it may not gel with you like how it might gel with somebody else, but that doesn't mean it's not a good movie or a well done movie like that. It's just sometimes things, and again, the great thing about movies, it's subjective. So things hit people differently, like whatever the case is, right? But I was just like so happy and excited. So let's talk
Wait,
about. Oh yeah, go ahead.
last week we started this conversation so differently. We used the word doozy because
Yeah.
we did the same, like watch a bunch of this studio's movies, and it was Netflix.
Yep.
And they do a few, like they have that little A24 thing they try to do with like throwing money to indie creators. And then there was a lot of like just crap. And
Yeah.
A24, I love this episode. And I was going through my list, making my top 10, and you're right, it was very difficult to do. I
Mhm.
found out I'd seen 44 A24 movies over the years. Some I didn't even know were A24 because it went back when I saw them. And it's just like their consistency is absolutely unreal. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the feeling we have right now compared to and that
Oh,
excitement when we did our homework of being like, this is fun now, especially after last week.
complete opposite. Complete opposite. Like when we were saying, like after watching all those Netflix movies, we're just like, oh my God, this was just torture at certain points. For me, watching the 5 movies I watched this week, and I won't go into them because I may pick some of them for the draft later, so I'm going to keep them close to the
Okay.
vest. But I did not feel that way at all. I was just like, I wish I saw this earlier. I don't know why I waited so long, but I'm glad I did, and I'm going to continue to do so because, like I said, I am late to the game and all that, and there's a lot of stuff that they put out that I need to catch up on. But hey, everybody, are you a fan of collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, and all that stuff like that? Do me a favor and visit entertainmentearth.com and you won't be sorry. Entertainment Earth is the premier place online for the latest and greatest toys, the most exciting action figures, and the coolest gifts and collectibles pop culture has to offer. From television, movies, sports, celebrities, comics, internet memes, and every fandom in between, they drop new products daily and curate their selection so that you don't miss out. Whether you're looking for something stellar from a galaxy far, far away with Star Wars, or from the streets of Gotham City with DC Comics, they've got surprises for everyone. Get access to exclusive releases and limited run pre orders. You can even reserve hard to find items before they arrive. From Funko to Hasbro, all your favorite vendors are represented in their robust catalog of cool collectibles. Take advantage of their unparalleled industry expertise and make your collection as worthy as Marvel's Thor. They are pleased to offer risk-free shopping with their industry-leading mint condition guarantee and hassle-free 90-day returns. Find that grail you're seeking for yourself or someone you love. And because I know how special they are and how they're going to be great for a lot of you out there, I worked a special deal with them that if you check out the link featured in the description of this episode, you will get 10% off plus free shipping over orders of $40 or more. I mean, that is fantastic, don't you think? Now, the 10% discount is only good for in-stock merchandise, so it doesn't work for any pre-orders, but if you take a look at their site, there's going to be a lot of stuff they have in stock that you'll probably want to get. So again, visit that special link in the description of this episode to take advantage of this awesome 10% offer plus free shipping and buy yourself or a loved one something really cool. Entertainment Earth, so many toys, so much fun. One of those movies that I will mention and we're going to talk about is, like I said earlier, it's A24's very first film that they distributed back in. So we were talking about it, like it made kind of like the film festival circuit in 2012. Again, that's when A24 launched. But it was released theatrically in February of 2013. And that is a glimpse inside the mind of Charles Swan III. So I was able to catch this. It's playing on HBO Max right now. Hopefully, by the time you watch this and or listen, it's still showing on that platform because HBO is doing a lot of crazy things right now, especially HBO Max, and they're getting rid of a lot of shows or whatever the case is. But for this one, it stars Charlie Sheen. Again, 2 years after the whole crazy blow up of Sheen all over the news, saying crazy stuff, doing a lot of crazy stuff and all that. And I thought that was really brilliant that their first outing stars this very controversial figure. And again, it also reminded me of how back in the day, companies like Miramax would rejuvenate careers of certain people. Pulp Fiction, I mentioned, where John Travolta was like forgotten for a very long time. And then Tarantino just comes in and say, you know what, you're going to lead up my new movie or whatever the case is. It's directed by Roman Coppola. And one of the things that I didn't realize while I was watching this movie is that, because one of the first reactions I got was like, you know, this reminds me of like a Wes Anderson film. Because it's very bright, it's very quirky, it's very like sometimes over the top. But also it has a humor like you would find in a Farrelly Brothers movie, right? So it's like a mix between Wes and Farrelly. Turns out that as I did my research, Roman co-wrote with Wes Anderson on multiple Wes Anderson films. So I'm just like, no wonder why it had that same, look and feel. Even the way the movie ended and everything, it has that same vibe. So I was like, no wonder why I'm actually enjoying this movie quite a bit because I'm a huge fan of Wes Anderson. So the movie itself, just like the main character who has an overactive imagination, the movie plays out like an overactive imagination realized on screen. Like I said, everything is bright, a lot of like wacky scenarios. The acting is sometimes to the point where it's like overacting, but that was the point, because like, everything is just so surreal and over the top. It also stars Bill Murray and Jason Schwartzman, who I also find really hilarious because them two pair up on a lot of Wes Anderson films. So here they are with Roman doing this movie. The dialogue sometimes it's like so out of left field. But at the end of the day, this one guy who is obviously sex crazed and goes through his life as an artiste of photography and design. He realizes that he's getting older in age, and his one true love he's no longer with. But it's his journey of realizing why this person is so important to him. And you kind of gonna see like his life through the lens of multiple different facets and through multiple different people and all that stuff like that. So I thought it was very well done. It definitely sets the tone of A24 as far as the type of films that they're looking forward to and looking into as far as distributing and later on down the road producing on their own. So, what were you saw this way long time ago, way before I did, and you actually saw it in the theater. So, what was your reaction when you saw this movie for the first time?
So I'm glad you got rehashed it just now because I don't recall the specifics. This we're talking 10 over. I guess this comes out. So they started as a company 10 years ago. This
Yeah.
comes out like 9.5 years ago, right? As their first official release. Um, I remember it was a similar feeling to that Wes Anderson kind of feeling, and
Hmm.
definitely got the Wes Anderson vibes, and especially around that time and a few years prior, there's a lot of people doing Wes Anderson style movies. There's a few times you get burned where you're like, okay, they tried to do that cutesy, idiosyncratic, quirky, hipster indie thing, and it's more of a copy. This one I felt like was legit, pulled it off, solid writing for sure,
Oh yeah.
and I definitely appreciate good writing in a film. It might be one of the things that can make or break a movie more than anything else for me personally. The fact that he co-wrote movies with Wes Anderson, including the year before they did Moonrise Kingdom and got nominated for the Oscar before.
Yep.
We're talking about Roman Coppola. Um, it makes sense, and so I remember having that feeling of it. The joke is, you look at the reviews for it. I remember even at the time, I was like, okay, people are shitting on this movie. It looks like that kind of movie I would like. I'm gonna go check it out, and I genuinely loved it. Um, I'm not. We're gonna do the draft a little later. I won't tell you like how high it is on my list, but it might pop up there. I remember like being elated after the movie, and kind of when you see something, your expectations are lower. You read some reviews, you go see it, and then just I've. It was one of those indie movies that hit really well, and I was elated. I get really excited when I see
Yeah.
what I feel like is an original good movie. Those are sadly too rare. So I really, really enjoyed it. For my homework this week, I was looking into the reviews, and it was worse than I realized. We're talking about 16 as of today, 16% on Rotten Tomatoes,
Wow.
28% on Metacritic, 4.6 out of 10 on IMDb, which isn't terrible, and then 2 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. But more damning is it has 4 fans, which Letterboxd uses as like people who put it in their top 4 movies. So there's
Hmm.
4 humans in the world on Letterboxd who have this in their top 4 movies. That's it. That's a really low number. There's a lot of just like piece of crap movies that have way more than that.
Right.
Um, I didn't realize that the reviews were that bad, and to my mind, I don't know what all Roman Coppola has directed since then. I know he's created projects, worked on projects, done things. There's a little bit of a nepotism problem here too, and I'm wondering if he gets more time with that because he's first cousins with Jason Schwartzman.
Yeah.
Jason Schwartzman in Wes Anderson's first movies, or sorry, in Rushmore, one of Wes Anderson's first movies.
Mhm.
That I don't know how the connections happen or who meets who when, and how much Wes Anderson is just a part of that family or whatever. But getting Jason Schwartzman in his movie, they're cousins. Getting it funded probably wasn't much of a uphill
Sure.
battle. Him getting his Hollywood bona fides through Wes Anderson, I'm assuming like Sofia Coppola has really really great movies. She has some that aren't as good nowadays. Like, I haven't,
It's been a while.
it's been a minute since there was one like on the level.
Yeah.
This one it flops pretty hard, and I wonder to what degree like people are being hard on him, or maybe some like industry if the reviews are that bad across the board, including fans, like it's not good. But like Charlie Sheen was a controversial pick to
Oh
have
yeah.
as the star of the movie. I remember finding him entertaining. I was a bit of not quite a devil's advocate, like, but this dude's going through issues. He has
Hmm.
drug problems. He has mental health issues. Like, I don't think that we necessarily need to say this guy should never act again. I don't know. I don't even, it feels like such ancient history, but the fact that these were so close together,
Yeah.
there was some like, is this a comeback kind of thing? Is this some weird fluke? Like, I don't know when the contracting happened, but if it was during that time or when he agreed to do this movie, I don't know. I don't know if Charlie Sheen has had that many legit projects since then. Back in the day, he's doing stuff with some really legit directors.
Yeah.
Um,
And he was
when
on
he's
that TV show that was like going on for a long time too.
okay, I'm not putting that in the category of super legit artistic merit projects, but
No, but he was working. He was working.
oh yeah, he was working
Yeah.
maybe a little too much. Maybe he just needed a little bit too much oomph in
Yeah.
his life. 2.5 Men, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Dude's in Wall Street, and then I always get it confused with another one. Is it Platoon and Oliver Stone movies? Like, he had bona fides for sure earlier
Hot
on,
Shots,
especially.
Hot Shots, and Hot Shots Part Two. I
I
mean,
love
come
I
on.
love where you go with the blockbuster knowledge.
Hell yeah.
I love that. Um, he's in Being John Malkovich. I forgot he had that
Oh yeah.
small hair. That's
Hmm.
so. Yeah, we don't need to go down Charlie Sheen's filmography, but this was to me. This was like more of an indie critical kind of thing, and he'd been let go from 2.5 Men at that
Sure.
point.
Yeah.
I don't know what's been going on with him. Hope he's doing well. But shout out Charlie Sheen for being in this quirky, idiosyncratic indie movie and being in the
Yeah.
very first A24 film. And I think it does a good job of setting the stage for what A24 is to become. Is we're not going to be worried about the box office and critical success. We're going to make some decisions that are a little bit unique. And I kind of like the fact that their first movie is not well reviewed and well beloved by everyone, and they said fuck it and kept going.
Yeah.
A lot of directors, they have a bomb and they can't make another movie.
Right.
Um, A24, I don't know what their financial situation is or was at the time, and if you bomb a couple times early on, but then it's not too long before they start having Oscar success and some proper financial success, which we'll get into when we go through more of their movies. But
Mhm.
that was what I remember from Inside the Mind of Charles Swan, seeing it in theaters, and just like, okay, this is a special, unique, weird movie. I really liked it, and I did not know what it would portend for the A24.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think one of the brilliant things also about the movie too is like the character that Charlie is playing can be compared to himself, really. Like kind of going through similar situations. They have their forms of addiction. They have their breakdowns and their moments like that. Their lust for life and women and all that stuff like that. So it is kind of brilliant how, in essence, he was playing himself. And maybe for him, this was therapeutic, right? Maybe for him, this was like how to cope with all the events that happened in the last couple of years prior to that. But I also do wonder that, with such low ratings and everything like that, like how people would feel about if this movie was released today,
Yeah.
because I feel like the palette for a movie like this is a little bit more tolerable now than it was back in 2013. So I am very curious, like if people were to revisit this movie today, what would the sentiments and perception be then at that point? Because time is always important, right? And who knows? You've heard it before. Oh, they were way ahead of their time when this came out, or blah blah blah, and that. So could this be another situation? I mean, I just saw it this week, and I loved it. You saw it back then, you loved it. So maybe it's just us, but I am very curious, like how critics would think about it. Especially if it was viewed for the first time today. But look, I'm sure a lot of you watching and or listening probably have no idea what this movie is. But if you would like a nice introduction to A24, I think this is one of the easiest movies to get into, for sure. Because a lot of the movies that Blake and I will probably be talking about in a minute when we go through our draft can be complex and can like formulate a lot of different emotions and feelings and all that stuff like that. This is very, very straightforward. And like I said, if you are a fan of Wes Anderson, then this is like within the same vein of his type of movies.
And it's only 86 minutes long.
Yeah.
Love a clean runtime.
Oh
God
yeah.
bless it. So much more digestible on HBO Max, as you mentioned. Definitely, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's got Wes Anderson, but it's also got more adult themes, and I
Sure.
kind of like that because Wes
Yeah.
Anderson can be a little bit prudent when it comes to touching on tough stuff. And he'll like
Cutesy.
touch
Very
on it, but it's a
cutesy.
little cutesy.
Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
precious. And this one will delve more into that stuff, and I like that, where it's a dude who's writing a lot of everyone's favorite Wes Anderson movies, but then saying, okay, we're gonna cut the cutesy and get a little more real with it, and
Right.
a little more like dreamy and imaginative. And I thought it's at the very least well written. It's got a
Oh yeah.
solid cast from Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman, Charlie Sheen. Um, and yeah, him doing the Charlie Sheen thing similar to himself. That's a really smart move at that time in his
Oh
career.
yeah. Hmm.
That's a lot of people have done that over time. They either parody themselves, they do something so ridiculous or outlandish out there, whatever. That was a pretty solid move for him. I wish that the movie had been more beloved. I'm also curious what it's like, what it would be like if it's released now. in 2012 we weren't as starved for indie movies and
Yeah.
indie dramas or comedies the way that we are now. Now it's so rare where blockbuster movies have and just the studios requiring large budgets. They spend a bunch of money and they need a big return, and that's like the model for it feels like so many companies other than A24.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I actually think it probably would be better reviewed. There's a lot of indie movies you see, and people are like, "Oh, thank you. This was an originally written movie that's not based on an IP. Top 5 of the year, like
Hmm.
automatically." Back in the day, you have movies like Kramer versus Kramer, like being number one in the box office kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, that wasn't uncommon, and then like it just become less common over time, and especially recently in the last 10 years. God bless A24 for sticking with it this whole
Oh,
time.
for sure. Yeah. And especially like in a day of streaming, like with streaming nowadays, if a movie like this came out on a streaming service,
Yep.
oh my God, so many people would be watching it, because like we said before, we just watched a slew of Netflix original movies, and more than half of those things were just awful to watch, were just painful. If this was like a Netflix original movie, I'd be like, wow, this was really fun. This was different. This was unique, entertaining and all that stuff. So again, it would be really, really interesting to see what people would think about it. So here's your homework, those of you watching and listening. If you have not seen this movie, I challenge you, check this movie out and then let us know what you think about it in the comments, because we would love to hear your thoughts and all that. And we've been having a lot of great conversations with a lot of you. So definitely this is one of those movies that I think could spark that conversation and a conversation about A24 movies and all that moving forward. So